Once upon a time, there was a young person named Eve who saw the world a little differently than most people around them. They had a very unique way of thinking that allowed them to notice details and patterns that other people might miss. Their brain was always buzzing with creative energy, and they had a heightened sense of sensory perception. Eve's way of communicating was a little different too. They tended to speak in a binary style, where they could be black and white or even admirably moralistic due to their deep thought. Though this could be challenging for others to understand. They had a strong moral compass and would get upset when others didn't follow the same rules. Their communication style and moral beliefs were their first realization that something was different. As Eve grew older, they began to notice that they didn't fit in with their peers as well as they would have liked. They struggled with social reciprocity, understanding one another, and the demands of people who thought they should be able to be normal, to act like them. And it felt like a constant trigger for them. Eve was so passionate about their interests and struggled to understand why others weren't interested in their passion. They wanted to be accepted, but felt like they had to hide their true self in order to do so. This was their second pointed realization: the communication style interacting with social reciprocity situations. As time went on, Eve began to develop safety and avoidance behaviours to cope with the stress of these triggers. They would retreat into themselves and engage in self-stimulating behaviours like tapping fingers, rocking back and forth, or gaming. This was the third realisation that their unique thinking patterns were interacting with their communication styles and creating these social challenges at times. Then, as Eve grew older, they began to feel like they had developed things that they would avoid and more safety things they would set up to prevent struggles and to deal with the demands of others. And these patterns weren't working for them anymore. They felt overwhelmed by the demands of the world around them, began to experience emotional distress, like feeling just so extremely overloaded by the intense sounds and demands of the environment in a supermarket. Their brain felt like it was on overload, about to explode, and they struggled to compartmentalise their feelings. They felt like they were constantly in a state of fight or flight, and it was taking a toll on their physical and mental health. Eve didn't realise it at the time, but they were experiencing the effects of trauma. The negative reinforcement caused by the demands of typical people so that Eve should act in this normal way had built up to such a powerful imposition upon Eve's persona over time. And Eve had developed this complex, unhelpful pattern. The emotional dysregulation they were experiencing was the fourth hidden realization of their soon-to-be self-revealed pyramidical neurodivergence pattern. Eve's experience is not unique. Research has shown that there is significant common occurrence between neurodivergence, thinking differences, and trauma, where we avoid demands because they become too internally painful. However, there is still quite a difficulty in understanding this, so Eve had to seek out support groups, people who'd experienced the same. On this path, one day, Eve had a revelation that their struggles could be represented by a pyramid, a pyramidical theory. It was as if a light bulb had turned on and everything started to make sense. Eve realised that the core symptoms of their differences could be broken down into three distinct corners of a triangle on the face of that pyramid. with the fourth being the third dimension, the hidden depth behind that triangle of surface symptoms. At the first corner of the pyramid was Eve's unique way of thinking, where their strong sense of right and wrong emerged from their deep understanding of the world in a literal and sensory perspective. This was the cornerstone of their unique, brilliant differences, and the source of their creativity and their unique perspective on the world. For we cannot have a strength without an accompanying weakness, or difference, as it may more appropriately be understood, Eve came to realise. At the second corner of this pyramid was Eve's communication differences, which resulted from their black and white or binary style of speaking based on their thinking. This style could be difficult for others to understand, and being literal, and could lead to misunderstandings and conflicts. At the third corner of the pyramid was Eve's specific interests and sensory needs, which created social struggles in understanding their own emotions and those of others. They found it hard to relate to people who did not share their interests, or to understand why people couldn't accept their sensory experiences. Behind the triangle of the pyramid was the fourth, hidden dimension, which represented Eve's internalized need to try to act normal in socially demanding situations. This created a sense of anxious worrying that looked like triggers and avoidance behaviours of complex trauma. Through this realisation, Eve was able to understand her own unique strengths and differences in a more nuanced way, to see and understand her neurodivergence. They could see how their struggles were interconnected and how each corner of the pyramid influenced the others. This understanding gave them a sense of clarity and helped them develop more effective coping mechanisms. Eve shared their insights with their supportive community, and it sparked meaningful conversations about the complex nature of neurodivergence. Together, they discussed how the pyramid model could help others understand the intersectionality of neurodivergence and trauma. Eve's realisation was a powerful moment in their journey towards self-discovery and acceptance. It gave them a framework to understand their struggles and a sense of empowerment to embrace their unique way of being. The pyramid model provided a new perspective on neurodivergence, one that recognised the interconnectedness of their experiences and the importance of understanding the whole person for Eve and all of her friends in that group. Eventually, Eve built up this community of people who accepted and understood them for who they were. They celebrated their unique way of thinking and communicated with them in a way that felt natural to them. Through this community, Eve was able to work through their trauma and develop coping mechanisms that were more effective for them. With time, Eve learned that being neurodivergent was not a weakness, but a strength. Their unique perspective and thinking allowed them to see the world in a way that others couldn't, and that was something awesome to be celebrated. After learning about the pyramidical theory, their struggles, Eve and their supports continued their journey of self-discovery and came across many techniques, like somatic and ego-based parts therapies. These approaches help them to accept and support their innermost mental, emotional, and somatic physiological bodily needs. Eve found that by working with their different internal parts, they were able to better understand and address their unique needs. Along with these techniques, Eve also learned about spoon theory, which allowed them to measure out the amount of energy they were comfortable with and could handle on a given day. This helped them to better manage their time and energy in a way that worked for them, rather than trying to conform to societal expectations. Over time, this became their new normal, and they were happy and proud of the progress they'd made. Through this support group, Eve was able to share their journey and the strategies that had worked for them with others. They realised that their experiences and insights could be helpful to others who were struggling with similar challenges. They also learned that their communication style was valid and didn't need to be changed to fit in with the neurotypical world. Eve's journey was not an easy one, but it was one of self-discovery and acceptance that allowed them to maximise their strengths appropriately. They learned that it was okay to be different and that their experiences were real and common. By embracing their neurodivergent traits and finding this supportive community, they were able to thrive and live a fulfilling life. Now, it's important to know that while support groups and therapy can be incredibly beneficial for individuals with neurodivergent traits and complex trauma, it's essential to seek help from a registered professional who is familiar with the neurodivergent affirming approach. It's also important to recognise that every individual is unique, and what works for one person may not work for another. Therefore, it's crucial to approach treatment with an open mind and a willingness to explore different strategies and techniques to find what works for you best.